Welcome to another episode of Diary of a Professional. This is Ash,
It's Lou.
and we have a lovely guest with us, Sandrine Etienne. But before we get into her and how amazing she is, we're gonna go into our gratitudes.
Yes,
So
we are.
I'm gonna pass it to Marlene for her to start
Okay, all
first.
right, all right. Yes, listen, I am just, even though it's probably not the best thing in the world with all the climate change, I am happy for the extended Indian summer that we're having, that I don't have to pull out the hoodies and the thermals and the whatever. I don't have to sit waiting for my car to warm up. We just start the engine and go right now. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful. Like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for the cold. I haven't won the Mega Millions yet, so I can be on somebody's island. So I'm just holding on.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I started like looking at flights for like January, February to like get away from like the cold weather.
Cause go ahead.
I'm like prepping myself to like what are ways to stay happy during the winter time.
Yeah.
So I get it. Okay, for me, my gratitude. I guess
Yeah.
having that quick getaway, just that quick reset. I recently went to DC just to like spend time with fam. It was like my cousin's birthday, and it was just like a great time to connect with family, meet new people, make new friends, and that just quick reset. Because that weekend, our weekends are so short. Those 48 hours,
If even.
you have to take full advantage of it. So I was happy to take that weekend to just spend some time and get away and get prepared for another Monday. But it was great. So yes, that I'm grateful for that. Those like little moments.
I like it. I like it.
So Sandrine, tell us your gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am grateful for the fact that I have now, well, we have now, my husband and I have now survived week 4 of daycare and our second cold with our son. It's been real. Like I have not gotten sick for the past few years, and I believe because of for whatever reason, the mask, I don't know, but I just have not gotten sick. And then of course my son, who's new to daycare, the second week he was there, he got sick, and I was like, please don't let me come down with something, please. And I didn't. And then he got sick again, because that is what happens. And we are in the height of cold and flu season. And I'm telling you, this cold tried to get me down. It tried, but I fought through it. So I'm so grateful that I am able to talk and just be like here to be able to speak with you both, because a couple days ago I wasn't so sure. I don't know, because it's been real. I've been like living off of probiotics, zinc. I found out about D3 and K2 supplements. I've been doing it all.
Shout out to your immune system, honey.
Yeah.
I did some of that too. But yeah, it's been real. Yeah.
I feel that. I literally just right before I came on, I had my oil of oregano drops, threw that under the tongue.
I just found out about this. A friend of mine was just telling me about this oil of oregano.
It works. When I tell you it hits the back of here,
okay,
it's like potent as Vicks that you can like ingest. I don't know. It's just so good. Like I feel the difference. Like it's activating things and it gets me through. So
okay. I'm adding it to the list.
Sounds a little scary,
yeah.
but it's not effective.
I feel like a sore throat coming on, and then it kind of just like attacks it, like in real time, like it's happening right now.
That's wild. Okay, adding it to the list.
So yeah, I'll be fine by the morning. I'm good.
Definitely got to add it to the list for sure.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of taking care of yourself, Ashley, get into it.
Yes, speaking of that, we have Sandrine Etienne here, who is a social worker and also a host from the Care Talkers podcast, and has like millennials and Generation X. We have our parents getting older on us, and I want to say I mean, Caribbeans, we are raised culturally to make sure we take care of our parents. Like, they are with us and taking care of them, and that is our plan, you know. However, I don't feel like we really discuss what goes into it, how scary it is, how burnout, how it can happen as well. And I really wanted to just talk about that because I feel like sometimes we shy away from those kind of conversations. And it's real and it's here for us, you know. So there's this saying like once a man, twice a child.
Yes.
And I just wanted to like talk about it in particular today. So I mean, Sandrine, tell us like how do you feel like we should experience approaching aging parents and like what are your experiences too as well?
So I do feel like it's an individualized experience because something that's not really spoken about is this idea of, yes, okay, like we just mentioned, growing up in a Caribbean household, normally you have to take care of your aging parents. That's what is expected of us. But a lot of times we're like thrown into it and we're just not prepared. And it's really hard to actually prepare because, imagine talking to your parents, especially, you both know that I'm Haitian, and imagine me saying to like, my mom, something like, oh, you're getting old. We got to have this discussion. It might not go over very well. Right. So that is one layer to it. And then the second issue too that I feel like people don't really talk about that actually my co-host and I were talking about because we're trying to think of Care Talkers, sorry, the podcast Care Talkers. My friend Anita and I were talking about those relationships with our parents, like those of us, not myself included, those of us that might have relationships with our parents that aren't the best, and then having to be a caretaker, that is rough. So that's why, again, I say it's an individualized experience. And it is really hard to prepare for. However, I do feel that there are some things that you can, some ways, I should say, that you can steer the conversation in talking about certain things, just preparing and planning. I know it sounds silly, but literally you have to plan. Like there's certain things like, we plan for our weddings. We have things like financial planning. You plan for special events, but we don't really plan for the aging process. And that really is important and needs to be done because we're all aging.
Yes. I mean, I feel like in so many different ways it all intersects. Like we've talked about, whether it's estate planning or, wills and things like that. Certain things, unfortunately, they take time to progress or whatever in certain diseases or just, the life aging process. But certain things just hit out of nowhere. A heart attack can come out of nowhere, a stroke can come out of nowhere and completely debilitate someone. And it's like, what measures did we put in place? Do I even know what this person wants? Like, do I know where everything is? All of those things, or, you know, in consolidating homes. You can't be in two places at once because us is, we're independent people. We'll have our own homes, our own spaces. Does that mean mom is coming into my space? Do I move in with dad? Which sibling, if you have that issue too, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot.
Yep. And that's why I say it's an individualized experience. It really, really is. It really is.
Yeah. I can. So can you give us some like insight of what you do and how you go through that and what you see and everything like that?
Sure. So first of all, I always say having the conversation is not an easy one, but there are certain things that you can talk to your parents about, asking things like, okay, so maybe you don't want to add me to your bank account, but if something happens to you, how can I pay your bills? What what are our options there? Or how do I get access to your account to just know where things are or how much money you have just in the event that something happens? And it's not to say like I'm trying to take your money and run with it. No, I'm literally just trying to plan for the what ifs because, and like you mentioned, Lou, the idea of you can have a heart attack anytime, you could have a stroke anytime, like all those things. And imagine having a stroke and not being able to talk. That's real.
Right.
I've seen it where, I've had children having to navigate talking to people like their health insurance, their loved ones' health insurance providers or their employers, but they'll say things like, "Oh, well, we can't talk to you because we don't have paperwork. So you should maybe have a healthcare proxy because then that at least gives designation to someone to speak on your behalf related to your health condition so that way you can get certain things done because it's not a fix all for everything, but it is a starting point. Same thing as a power of attorney, similar situation that has to do with finances. Even having something like that in place could just make a world of difference. So I always start with that conversation because I think it's really important that we have these documents in place. And sometimes a good way of opening that conversation up is if your parents had someone close to them, like, maybe a sibling of theirs or a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, someone that they work with that all of a sudden got sick. You can use that experience to say, hey, mom, dad, I really think it's important that we have this conversation because look at what happened to so-and-so. This could just happen to you. And what would I do? Or how can I navigate these potential issues without having the documents in place?
No, it's so true because I didn't start really thinking about this because I feel like in my household, we just go with the flow. We're just going with the flow. But I was with my dad, spending time with him the other day, and he's in his 70s, like in his mid 70s. And I see a cane there, and I'm like, why do you have a cane? Oh, sometimes my foot hurts, and I kind of slipped the other day, and I'm like, oh, but I'm fine, and I'm like, okay, all right. Or I'm talking to him these days, and like completely forgets what we were talking about in mid sentence, and I have to kind of like refresh him on our conversation. He's like, oh, yes, 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 such and such. So he's, of course, alert and oriented, but I'm like, he starting to get forgetful. He's slipping. He's not telling me he has a cane at times, to use. And I'm like, we've never had any kind of discussions about anything. We're just going with the flow. And I'm here nervous, like, what are my next steps with him? Like,
Right.
I want to tell him. I think I was telling Marlo the other day. I was like, I kind of want to take his car from him in the next few years because he finally told me he's not even seeing well at nights. Like he's kind of like telling me hints here and here, but it's like he's still trying to hold on to that independence. Like how? I'm like, how am I gonna tell my father that? How me go tell my father you
Yeah,
can't do these things anymore? And it's uncharted territory for me.
it is very common, totally relatable. And to that, this is what I say. Remember, your parents, they are your parents. No matter what, they will always be your parents. And the thing with the aging process is there's a lot of things that you see declining, like you mentioned the driving. And even having a simple conversation about the driving can be so triggering for someone who's older because think about it. Like, I know for me, I started learning how to drive when I was like 17, 18 years old. And it was like the best thing. And it was like my key to freedom. Like, yes, I can go places, I could do things. So now you're basically telling your dad, you can't do this, you can't do that. They don't want to hear that. So I say, tread lightly and try your best. And this is for anybody who's going through something like this. Try your best to remember that your loved one is a person, that they have autonomy, that you want to include them in the discussion, not just saying, hey, I'm going to take away the keys. Instead of saying that, how about you flip the conversation and say something like, Dad, I'm noticing maybe, your awareness sometimes, I'll use my mom as an example, just because it's easier for me, because I don't know your dad and I don't want to personalize the experience. So my mom, I noticed that at some point her vision was getting really bad and she was still driving. And I'm like, Mom, you can't be driving. Oh no, I'm just going to the supermarket. It's just right there. It's like really close. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Something happens to you, I'm in trouble, because I knowingly knew that you were in the car driving. I was like, how about, and I never told her, let's take away the keys or anything like that. She still has the car.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell her, look, let's do once a week. Let's go to the grocery. Now, maybe not so much just because of timing, but, just including her in the sense of saying, like, for her not to say something like, oh, well, how am I going to go get groceries? Well, let me take you to do the groceries. Or if you have a doctor's appointment, let me take you to the doctor, or do certain things like that, rather than just like suddenly taking away. Because when you do that, it's so demeaning to them. And I know that's not how it's meant, but for them, that's how they look at it. Whereas if you slowly do it, or do it in a way that you involve them and include them in it, I say at the end of the day, your best defense is communication. Is just communicating. And it's not always perfect. It's not always going to work, but at least you know that you've tried.
Yes. I think that's why, like, in your position as a social worker, it is so, it's there's certain tools that you have, because sometimes it's like, there's a problem. We know there's a problem. But in knowing how to, present solutions or have, different options, because it can't just be like, you can't drive. And it can't always be, what if you live in a different state from your parent? You can't just be like, hey, I'm going to pick you up every Tuesday. But knowing what resources are available, especially when they're of a certain age, above certain, 62, 65 or whatever, what is available to them? Because we know as Caribbean parents, they're independent, they're stubborn, they don't want to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And they've worked too hard and paid way too much into this American system to not reach some of the benefits that they're allowed just because they reach a certain age. Can you give us some examples of things that, like if whether it's like an ambulance or certain services that are available to them to help them keep some of their independence, or, help transition into, those older ages?
Yeah, so some of the things, I mean, unfortunately, I will say, like, community resources just overall over the past few years for a lot of things, including, that I just hate to, constantly blame it on that. But a lot of things, there are limitations to getting certain services. However, I think just being creative in the sense, like you mentioned, for example, you said, what if you're in a different state and you can't take your loved one to the grocery? Totally valid. That totally happens. So maybe do some sort of shopping delivery service, like a grocery delivery type of service. Finding a local grocery in the area that delivers, or if that's not an option, especially if you're far away, resources like Stop and Shop, because they have Peapod that you can order. Now Instacart is like the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Although expensive, but don't tell your parents. They'll be like, you pay how much,
Right.
Or just even finding some sort of local community resource, like through the Department of Aging. Maybe they have access to some sort of transportation that can pick them up to take them grocery shopping. Maybe not the grocery store that they like, but it is, that's a thing. We have to help them realize that there's certain things they're going to have to compromise on. Like, I work mostly in the South Queens area, and many of my patients might like Fambria. But, Fambria is not accessible for if your daughter is living in Florida. She can't order from Fambria for you, so she might have to use something else that you may not like. So again, I'm going to go back to the communication piece, just communicating to them and saying, like, look, maybe there's a service in the local area that I can link you with that's going to either give you grocery deliveries or take you to the grocery once a week, something like that. Because it's limited, but there are certain services like that, like transportation. Maybe your insurance, although limited, they might have a car service that you can tap into that might help, or even partnering with a local car service company that might be able to take you to your appointments at a discounted rate. Or listen, now these days, we're so used to using our phones as the millennial generation. You can
Yeah,
actually order Ubers or Lyfts for your loved ones without them even having to make a phone call. Or if you want them to have that independency, you can actually refer them to a phone number that they can do it themselves, but you're
Mhm.
still in control of that on the back end as far as, making the arrangements and all that stuff. So there's like definitely ways, I think, if we think creatively, how to help your loved one at least maintain their autonomy as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, they want to feel that they still have some sort of control.
sure.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there are layers, as they get older, there's, comorbidities, your health, their health. So just like, what advice do you have, if you have, for people who are caretakers of parents who have Alzheimer's, dementia, things along that line? Because caretaker, like, burnout is so real. So I just want to, I'm just thinking of all those people out there as well who have to try to take care of themselves. I don't know if you have any advice with that as well.
Absolutely. So whenever I meet with a patient and their loved ones, like if I meet, whether it's their children, their spouses, I always ask them, how are they doing? Many of them are always surprised, like, wow, you actually asked me how I'm doing? I thought you're here for my mom or my dad. I'm like, well, I'm here for you too.
Right.
Like, come on, let's talk about it. And when you're dealing with illnesses like dementia, it's very overwhelming. And I mean, that's just one illness. There's so many different ones out there, but
Hmm.
you know, dementia, for example, there's so many layers to it. And at the utmost priority should be the caregiver, because as you mentioned, it's a very overwhelming experience. It can be. And so having the right supports available is important. And a lot of times it can't be a family member or a friend or, someone of that nature. Really, you feel isolated. So to that, I always tell people, whether you're dealing with dementia or, stroke or, different type of illnesses, there are support groups out there that can be very helpful, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Even caregiver support groups that they're not so specific, but just leaning into and connecting with others that are going through similar experiences. You'd be surprised how much support you can gather from that, and how important self-care is within that core group.
I agree because I see it all the time, like we were talking about before off camera. And, because we're kind of like in that sandwich. Is if you have like children, you're their caretaker by nature, for sure. But then your parents are getting older, and then you're just stuck. And it's like, you know, it's a lot of pressure that day to day, especially if it's the majority of the burden is on you. You might have a parent who still thinks like you're five and will treat you that way,
Yeah.
even though everything is on you. They want to do this, they want to do that. You still have to like be a whole human being, and that self-care that is necessary, that's where it comes in as hard as it is. When you're taking off of work, but then people aren't feeling appreciative and you have to do this and do that. It's a lot. It's a whole lot. And I don't even know how someone becomes prepared for that. But I think people have to be cognizant of where they are, their limitations, and for sure, like the resources you said, because you can feel like an island, when you're going through those things, but it's especially something, let's say, like Alzheimer's, it's a long road. It's not
Mhm.
just one, two, three, and you know, as sad as it is, I've had patients, you know, who like their, you know, child has had cancer. And while of course it is sad that they died, sometimes there's a little sense of relief.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's a little sense of relief,
Yeah.
like they can finally exhale in certain ways. And I hope the people who go through that is like, you know, certain burdens are taken off, that they don't feel guilty for feeling like I don't have to shoulder so much anymore.
Right. 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 Yeah. And a huge part of like, I feel in our communities, just being that obviously we identify as women of color, there's a lot of times when we're going through this, like if you're a caregiver and you're going through this, for some reason there's this idea that you have to do it alone, but you don't. And that's why I say it's so important to have these conversations, let people know that you're going through this, because that can be such a big help, believe it or not. Like you might find someone in your circle, in your network, that's going through something similar, that all of a sudden opens up and might be able to support you in a way. Like something as simple as picking up prescriptions. Do you know how valuable that is for someone who's in it 24/7? Like to not have to worry about, oh my gosh, the doctor called in this new medication and I have to get it. Like that, you know, that within itself, you know, like which mentioned the groceries, like there's so many other things that people can do to help out. And so I think it is really important that we continue to have these type of conversations and just really letting people know that we're going through this so that you don't feel so isolated and alone, so that you're not on the island by yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just I just feel like for me personally, as my parents get older, I'm just feeling more guilt along the way. Um, just because it's like, I'll be honest, I feel like I'm losing my independence along the way too.
You do. Yeah.
And
That's
it's like,
true.
I don't want to express that because then I feel like the awful child to know, like, okay, at some point I'm gonna have to do X, Y, and Z, and I can't do this as much or this as much, and for me to actually vocally say it, it makes me feel like, how dare I, you know? So I feel like at times I am processing like feelings of guilt already
Yeah.
from feeling the way I do, you know?
Yeah. And that's because I feel like you're feeling like it's what's expected of you, because this is our culture. But at the same time, remember that as a millennial, we look at things a little bit differently. Like, I'll give you an example. When I had my son, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna hire a housekeeper because I just couldn't do it anymore. My husband couldn't do it. I hate cleaning, and I started having her come once a month or like every other month, and then all of a sudden now I have her coming like every week, and I'm not mad about it. My mother complains and complains and complains, but you know what? I tell her it's my money, and this is the one thing that I can do that gives me peace and also doesn't make my house look so crazy. That to me is self-care. And
Yes.
I'm prioritizing myself and my needs because I can't do it all. So I think at the end of the day, you shouldn't feel guilty. I know it's easy for me to say that, but no matter what, you're going to always feel guilty, because I've had those moments myself, because I have a mom who's aging. I have a son who is, you know, a baby. So juggling it all is very, very difficult. And you do go through this guilt. Like, I have a list of appointments that I have to take her or do with her, and I don't even know where to begin because I just don't have it in me. But, you know, I just know that there's only so much you can do, and just keep reminding yourself that you're one person, and that if you have to outsource, that's okay too. That's okay too.
You know what? I think a lot of that comes because they did so much with
Yes.
so little,
Yes.
and we never saw them sweat. We never saw them cry. They never took a rest. They never took a
Yeah.
beat. And part of it is kind of like, wow, there's like my superhero. There's like a chink in their armor. That's very kind of scary. You know, when all of a sudden, like your parents are everything, and all of a sudden there's like a little limp, or you see like a little
Yeah.
wrinkle that you didn't notice. It's like, whoa. mortality is real. But yes, I also think because they never had the luxury of saying, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? You are able to say, I can afford, a housekeeper and then gain that time. You know what I mean? Time is a certain luxury that, of course, in the end is really what we all want. We want more quality time with them. And I don't think they can see it that way because for them, sometimes success is tied to productivity.
Right.
And we like to have a good time if we can. We like Ashley said, she's already thinking about January and February because we know what the burnout looks like.
Right.
We know what it feels like to be like, I can't be around these people. I'm about to quit my job and burn it all down. And they never got to do that. So sometimes, yes, they are going to resent us because they can't articulate, I never got to do that. That doesn't seem feasible because they never did it.
Right.
They never knew how to do it.
And that's the thing. It's like, which is why I always go back and forth with my mom about a lot of different things because my mom is very old school. And I always tell her, like, but this is now. Like, this is now. Like, we're in 2022, about to be 2023. Things are a bit different. And also, too, I feel like I know we're all in healthcare and other different, areas. There's so many things that you're responsible for in your work life that you come home, it's like a whole nother thing. And you're just so the level of overwhelm that you feel. That's why I say it's a different time. That's what they don't understand. I am telling you, I have spoken to high school students, middle school students, the burden that they feel of things that is going on in their life right now. It's surreal. We are really in such a unique time. So
that's a nice way of unique. That's a nice way of putting it. Because half the time it feels like a shit show.
Yes. Oh, that's my favorite word.
Smiling and Sunday brunch is coming, so let's have a mimosa to put that on the way. Girl.
Yes.
Girl.
And let me tell you something. Now that I have a child, at times I will take him with me. My husband and I were very social. We love to go out, so we will take him with us. Listen, you go sit in this high chair at the restaurant and enjoy brunch with mom and dad. He might be screaming, but you know what? We made it out the house.
Let me tell you, very quickly, they learn what like mommy juice is and that they can't touch it. It can look just like the orange juice, but they be like, hold on, can I touch it? No, you can't. And that's the end of the conversation. I love that for the both of us.
Yes. My little one goes, cheers. He gets his bottle and goes, cheers.
Yes. Unlike our parents, children are very adaptable.
Oh, yes.
They will roll with the punches. They'll be all right.
They'll be exactly.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, you're doing an amazing job. Don't, again, I know it's easy for me to say, but the guilt, it's going to come, but it's okay. Like, it's okay.
Thank you. I think I needed to hear that because it's something I do struggle with. And thank you. That's why I was like, we need to speak to you today for sure. But thank you for coming. Please let the people know about your podcast one more time, where they can find you. Let us know. Let them know.
Yeah, so you can follow our podcast Instagram page at Care Talkers. And we have season 1. All the episodes are there we're on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. And we are in discussion of season 2. Just, myself and Anita, my co-host, we have a lot going on, but we will be back very soon. And so follow us on Instagram and you will be updated as far as when season 2 will launch.
We will be looking forward to it, honey.
Yes.
This life thing don't stop.
It does not. It does not. Thank you, ladies, so much. This was so great. This was so fun. I'm so happy that you guys asked me to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So everyone, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, let us know your thoughts. And till next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.